Hello, this is Cryptolyze. I hope you are well this Thursday, November 2, 2023. We meet today to talk about BTC, to talk about FOMC because we had Jerome Powell who spoke. We're going to talk about Solana and we're going to talk especially about the classes. You will see that there is a nice acceleration that has taken place, a nice retracement. We will explain why. As a reminder, you always have the possibility of having free access to the educational course, which is a 60-hour training worth €400, which allows you to learn blockchain, crypto, investment, analysis technique, trading, everything to become profitable. Through 130 videos, 400 pages of guides, quizzes to find out where you are. Are you progressing, and all for free? To have access to this lifelong training, simply use the platform of one of our partners. Everything is explained in the comments and descriptions. We'll start with news related to the SEC. We talk a lot about the SEC in male terms, talking about loans, the pressure it puts on cryptos, the pressure it puts on BTC, the fact that it does not validate the BTC ETF, but we talk quite a few of its actions which are rather positive, notably here the attack on SafeMoon in which they arrested the presidents and founders of SafeMoon. As a reminder, SafeMoon was a token which was a shitcoin in which there were $200 million of investors which were, investor funds, which were embezzled, and that they absolutely did not hidden. The CEO of SafeMoon and the creator of SafeMoon had pocketed a large part of the profits at the same time from SafeMoon and by selling this SafeMoon against users. And I remember that at that time I was one of the people who asked myself big questions about SafeMoon, and that the few people who spoke out against this type of token were getting asthmatic. People insulted them because everything people were simply in SafeMoon without realizing the risks. And that we will have to be very careful because it is not because we have a token which accelerates upwards, a protocol which accelerates upwards, that the project behind it is good, especially if we enter into a bull run. Next to it, we have an article from Cointelegraph which explains the rise of BTC mainly in the face of the notion of stocks being overvalued. And what will interest me is the notion of the valuation of stocks proposed by mainly Cointelegraph on the fact that we have approximately an overvaluation of 23% of equity. So that is to say actions currently, therefore, of the S&P 500 and the NASDAQ, and that at present we should have a continuity of the retracement on the QT and that this should enhance the value of BTC. So I will let you read the article because it is relatively interesting, but it still has a bias which is relatively strong, is that it is a media that specializes in crypto, and therefore we take the information as it is to promote the information we want. But when we really look at what it is that yes, indeed, we have an overvaluation. So it is between 20 and 25% in general, when we base ourselves on the average of the last 50 years compared to the 5% premium. So what is interesting to see is that yes, we agree, but that has been valid for a certain number of years already. It is not today, it is not now. So it is not news that explains the increase in BTC, and that this is not what will push BTC upwards, so we just need to take a step back once again. Next to us we have Solana, who still does a lot of things for us, so I will certainly make a video for you tomorrow on Solana. I am waiting to have all the information regarding the conference which took place. But there are two things to take into consideration. We have had a huge acceleration. So at some point that means there will be profit taking. Be careful, and you are not the only ones who want to make a profit. We have FTX, which is in the process of unstaking 67 million tokens. So obviously there will be a market movement not necessarily linked to the sale of the token because we don't even know if it will be sold. But it is above all that the fact that it is a stake, we will have people who will take profits aggressively and therefore cause the price to jump downwards. So just be careful with your positions regarding yesterday's macro news. We did not have bad things report. Yellow, which returned to positive, which is rather precisely positive, the PMI, which is down a little, but that was expected from that side. And above all, we had Powell's speech. So we're not going to hide it. 5-5 in terms of rates, we're staying there. The speech itself was very dovish, so that is to say very half-hearted. We didn't necessarily have a decision. We were in, yes, the economy is doing well, but on the other hand, the leaps that are going up, so we don't need to make more to actually put a weight on the level of the economy, that at the moment the conflict which is taking place has little impact on the American economy, and that the last really important point that he gave, it is that he did not know the extent of what remained to be done to be able to continue to bring down inflation. As a reminder, inflation is driven by two things. 1. The price of oil. 2. The price of services. Price of services, good price of oil, let's keep it simple. It is linked to the general and global macroeconomy, and price of services is linked to the saving capacity of households, and that he was very clear. I have absolutely no idea where we are on that front. We have clues, we have elements which give us information that there is no longer any savings capacity, and yet the services are still holding up. So that means that there is perhaps an overestimation of the fall in savings at the level of different households, because the economy is mainly based on the level of services, and that is where there is a big question mark. So how did the general market take it? Rather correctly, we are in a retest phase. We had the really aggressive retest that we broke out in. We continued. In the classic retest, when we draw a Fibonacci retracement on the bearish impulse that we had, we see that we are heading towards the 0.5, which for me is the classic retest that we were able to have here in this movement there, too. And there is a possibility that we go much higher, which is the retest that I left for a very long time here, the 786, which I would also be consistent. I keep it in mind. As a reminder, I have been in position here since we did this first retest, that of this retest there, so I am in a continuity of position construction. So for me, I am looking to return. I entered here on this retest there, and I will perhaps return here if we ever go a little higher so that you can accompany this movement. Support. We don't forget the targets. Here, 41,000, low target, push target. We are looking for 3,800 with a search for equity here. For what? Because we have a NASDAQ which for its part has recovered very little. That is to say that there, we have a small downward movement. But we see that we are in the process of swallowing a large part. Technology stocks mainly hold the SP 500. If we ever have a retracement of tech stocks, which are those that are the most overvalued currently, at that moment, we will have a strong SP 500 which will fall, even if we have a NASDAQ which will just retest classic levels of polarity with 13,000 and 12,500. Well, all in all, we have next to the euro dollar, which is in the process of being retested here at the level of 1.06, which is mainly linked to the DXY, which is in the process of lateralizing. So what's interesting is that the DXY, we're really in a zone here of compression above this breakout, okay? We are really building on this support. And when we actually look in terms of liquidity, there clearly we are in a reaccumulation phase, at least for me. This is my vision, a small phase of reaccumulation before starting to rise again, and in which the next stage, I have already told you, is 110, in which we will retest all this imbalance which is here. And what is interesting to see is that when we look a little bit at the bounds, Jerome Powell's speech dropped a little bit of the east on the bounds, and it will be very important to monitor the weekly closing that we are going to have at the level of the bounds, because we could have a reduction in the candle. And so there we could really have a signal that we have a relaxation at the level of treasury bonds, and therefore that potentially implies a transfer of equity to the level of equity. Although we are still relatively far away, we will wait as usual. Oil has not changed too much so for me at the macro level. If I have to draw the conclusion, it is that we have a discourse which has pushed for the retracement at the level of the different indices, which is normal. And at the same time, this is what we expected on this side, and therefore what we are going to expect will be the confirmation of a continuity of the downward trend to precisely validate the different targets that we have. As for BTC, we pushed hard. We went to retest the 36,000 last night, and this morning we are going to really look a little more daily, in which we can see here the bullish break of this range, which had lasted for a very long time, a form of consolidation. And second, acceleration. On this, there are several visibilities. The first thing that I would like to note to you is that we have the RSI, which is really similar to this part of January 2023, in which we had an overvaluation of the RSI, a momentum which was falling and behind a new attachment which was made before having the break. A break, moreover, which was SVB. So there we were in a site which was a little bit particular with the American economy, and in particular American banks, who were under pressure strangely linked to crypto. We really had this narrative there, which was there. But what is interesting to see is that we could really be in setup there with a final acceleration to get the target here from 1.618 to 36,382. So 37,000 we could say with an extension, and then here take a little breath and start to rise again. So that's a scenario which is being validated here for me at the level of the RSI. It remains one probability, the other probability it is a bullish continuity to go much higher. And therefore we would go for the 40,000. I made the video for you on Saturday to explain that to you. So it could really be the last phase of acceleration to then carry out a consolidation and a breath. So at the level of short-term elements, really short-term in 1 hour, We see the breakdown of the range which took place, big bullish breakout, big liquidation sector. And then we have a consolidation in 3 stages in which we are in the process of go and retest here the breathing we are having. We haven't broken it. It's interesting. And we will be able to monitor if we ever break the 35,150 here. This implies that we will go and retest the 34,800 quickly enough to make either a sweater, back and consolidate and leave either behind break bearish, and on that we could have the establishment of a distribution with a BCRSTUT, and therefore we could go for a UTAD with behind a pullback UTAD, then to have an LPSY and a bearish continuity will be worth monitoring in any case. At the level of the RSI in 1 hour, we can see that it is in the process of breathing, which is rather classic afterwards. There are big accelerations, like that. We can clearly see that the momentum is good. Bearish currently to have a breather, and which is rather normal in this phase of lateralization to leave the price decompressed. In terms of underflow, we don't have much that is being given to us apart from the fact that we have the open interest, which is relatively flat, and the most important limit point for me would be the CV spots in which we return to key levels, which are the levels of October 2023, before the acceleration too. So we have liquidated a large part of the spot currently, and therefore this implies that it is mainly due to perpetuals and people who do not sell their positions, despite the fact that we have liquidation clusters which have taken place. That is to say, first cluster of liquidation, second cluster of liquidation. So the big movement that we had was linked mainly to this profit taking here and to the liquidations which took place during the movement. It is interesting to see that there was no liquidation cluster in the movement here, and that's really important to remember. That means that it was mainly fueled by sales markets. So people who played what? Who simply played here, breaking the range to seek a target a little lower, therefore with very strong levers. So we have this typology of people who are positioned. But what is interesting to see is that the second, on the other hand, acceleration, that was a liquidation that was put in place. That is to say that we carried out a lateralization before seeking this liquidity. And we see that we have almost no more liquidity. So that's why I'm telling you that we could still have a little short-term acceleration before having this breathing space that we're waiting for. Especially since when we look at Kingfisher here, we can clearly see that short-term liquidity, we have quite little in the short term or even close to it. We are more in a trend to go after large amounts of liquidity, which are either far below 32,000 or far above 40,000 up to 42,000, which are the targets that we have data. At this time, we can clearly see the spot CVD, which is sinking. Same level here as October. So this confirms the bias we have, and we have a perpetual CVD here which is also falling, but overall anything that can hold on. We will do an analysis tomorrow precisely on the history of this CVD perp, and you will see that it is interesting. The other point which is very important to remember is that we are starting to have a potential break in the total market cap, therefore all of the cryptos, so we will have to monitor whether this weekly close if we manage to close above this range. At that moment we will have a very, very strong signal for all cryptos and not just BTC. That's really important on the other hand. If we re-enters there on the other hand, we will have big questions to ask ourselves, and moreover when we also look at the total market 3, therefore which excludes BTC and ETH which represent the altcoins. We see that we are in an attempt here to close above this oblique which has been holding us for some time. An oblique compression, so on that it's the same. If we close above this oblique, it means that we will have a potential signal to have a good breathing in terms of altcoins. And when we look at this acceleration that we had there, we see that the dominance of BTC is in retracement, but below the 54%. So that means that BTC is no longer the only one to push currently. We are no longer in a joint form of all cryptos, because at the same time we have less news at the level of BTC, of the BTC ETF, which was the pure endogenous news of BTC. And there, on the other hand, we have good performances which are in progress to be pushed in particular by Solana, where I will make you a video. So tomorrow, 13:30. I hope you like this video. If so, don't forget to leave me a like and a comment. It always makes me very happy. And we meet today, 13:30, to talk about ADA, the crypto from Cardano, and it is at 13:30.